The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.
When planning a trip to Savu Savu, you need to check out this resort right here. Postcard settings, picturesque views, not too far from the airport, and if you want that sense of being close to the water, then look no further. Savu Savu's Korosan Resort is located within a 160-acre sanctuary on the island of Vanuatu, offering the genuine warmth and friendliness of the Fijian people. With its beautiful lush tropical surroundings and warm impossibly clear waters, this is tranquility bliss. The resort is about 11 minutes away from the airport and sits in a remote setting that uniquely redefines the meaning of paradise. Whether you are traveling solo, with family, a loved one, or a group of friends, there is something for everyone to enjoy. From 3 very comfortable accommodation options, meals and drinks from one of their 3 dining locations, ocean activities such as kayaking, to a guided snorkeling off the resort property. Or if you wish to explore the underwater gems of the hidden paradise, then the best scuba diving team is on standby to guide you to your next adventure. The Hidden Paradise is also home to many unique attractions that draws visitors from far and wide, one of which is the Salt Lake, nestled in and amongst lush, serene vegetation and garnished with a tidal river whose salt water streams in from the Koro Sea. You can kayak, paddleboard, or just frolic in the lake, but for me, a selfie for my Instagram collection is the order for the day. And when in Savu Savu, here are my 3 recommendations for you to also check out. A trip to view the Natewa Bay, which is the largest bay in the South Pacific and home to a hidden and untouched underwater reef system. Kokomana to experience the magic of their fine flavored chocolates that are all handmade in their factory. You can also enjoy a tour through their farm to understand the chocolate making process from tree to bar. A great experience. And for some of the best curries in Savu Savu, Mom's Country Kitchen is my recommended hole-in-the-wall eatery that serves arguably the best tasting curries in the Hidden Paradise. Travel into paradise and explore the hidden gems of Savu Savu. Fiji Link flies 4 times a week from Nandi and 3 times a week from Suva into Savu Savu. For bookings and more information, visit www.fijiairways.com.
The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji. The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.
Bulavinaka and welcome back to The Pulse, our last show for the season, and I trust you're having a great evening so far as you join me live on MyTV, across our MyTV Facebook page, including our viewers watching on our YouTube platform. Thank you for your company. Before the break, my Eat, Stay, Love profile on Coral Sun Resort in Savu Savu and my 3 recommendations of other places you can visit when you plan a trip to the Hidden Paradise. Now for Homegrown and profile on Beauty Vaani and Giavaani Singh.
My name is Giavaani Singh. I am originally from Nambua, Suva. I am a mompreneur. I have been a beauty therapist for the last 15 years, going on to 16. My business is called Beauty Vaani, which is a hair and beauty salon. I initially started this in 2017 as a freelancer, and today I own this salon. So Beauty Vaani is a hair and beauty salon. We open 6 days in a week. Monday to Fridays we open 9 to 5. Saturdays 9 to 2. However, we work with appointments. We're very flexible, as there are mothers or other clients out there who prefer to come earlier or after hours. We accommodate that as well. Then we are located in Pacific House, which is on Butt Street, Suva City. I believe I am the biggest inspiration in my business. I graduated in 2006 from the beauty school. The day I graduated, I had a goal, which was to gain as much experience in the beauty industry for at least 10 years. And after 10 years was to start my own business. And that is exactly what I did. And here I am. I didn't really face a lot of challenges. The only challenge I faced was I was a new mom. And juggling being a mom and being a businesswoman, I would say was the biggest challenge. It was a juggle, I had to juggle, be at work, then be there for my son. And it was hectic, but I didn't let that stop me from where I am today. The best thing for me would be the smile at the end of every session, be it fixing someone's eyebrows or be it a massage. When I see my clients smiling, for me, that is the biggest joy, and that is, I would say, is the biggest or the most important thing for me in my business. Andy, as you and I know, everyone has been affected by COVID-19. However, I personally think I was affected quite a bit. I was among other businesses who were labeled high-risk businesses. And just 4 months into starting a salon and second phase of COVID happened. So that was very stressful mentally, financially, as we didn't really have a choice but to close the business. So in that process, we still had to pay bills, we still had to pay the rent. So that was a bit of challenge, I would say, or hardship that we faced in my business. However, that didn't stop me from moving forward. I had an adaptation plan where I came up with my product line, which I had been working towards. And in that process, I actually had it. I made it happen. As a business owner, I would say we can't just stick to doing one thing. We need to think outside the box. And in order to survive, we need to come up with a plan B. My plan B was this. This is Giavaani, a hair booster product, which I launched last year in September. And this has been my savior, I would say. I must say, Andhy, that I'm very blessed to have good friends, families who always pushed me and who motivated me on my down days, especially when the salon was closed and I was quite stressed. They pushed me to come up with my product line, and this has happened now. So I'm very blessed there. We are on the social media page, Facebook and Instagram. Both for the product line is Giavaani, and the beauty salon, the hair and beauty salon, is Vaani. As for our physical location, we are based in Pacific House, which is on Butt Street, Suva. Personally, being in the business and from what I've learned is that you should never give up. You need to be a part of your business in order for it to grow as well. You need to always believe in yourself on your down days when you think there is no solution. Always remember, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. You can always make a way.
This week in Culture Explained, we visit Naililili in the province of Rewa. Take a look. Naililili in the Itauke language means the place of hanging. This was particularly for the prisoners of war, and in 1852, when the first French missionaries arrived, they were told to stay here with the intention of scaring them off as the place was deemed haunted. The first Catholic church in Rewa was built in 1865 and stood for 21 years before it was destroyed by floodwaters in 1887. The second church, which is now a historic attraction of Rewa, was completed in 1901, and the pulpit and altar for the church was received after the completion of the Mass conducted by the late Saint Pope John Paul when he visited Fiji in 1986. The first rugby ball was kicked in the Naililili rugby grounds by the French missionaries that began a crazy and passionate culture for the sport of rugby. Culture Explained on the Catholic Church and Naililili rugby grounds in Naililili in the Chiefly province of Rewa. And before that, Homegrown with Giavaani Singh and her business Beauty Vaani. Time for a short break. We meet TV New Zealand's Barbara Dreaver next. That's my Talano segment. See you after the break.
You feel it, I feel it, it's in the pulse. It's in the pulse. It's in the pulse.
The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji. The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.
Bula and welcome back to The Pulse. I trust you're enjoying our last show for the season. Now let's meet TVNZ's Barbara Dreaver, my final guest in my Talano segment. Take a look.
I was born in Banaba, or Ocean Island, in Kiribati. My mother is from Kiribati and my dad's a Kiwi, and many, many years ago he had gone up to Tarawa to be a VSA for the New Zealand government, and the story is he walked into a crowded room, saw my mother and said, "I'm going to marry that woman." And apparently that is the truth. I've heard it from many accounts, and so he did, and then he got posted in Banaba, which is where I was born. I grew up in Tarawa and went to school, Rurabau Primary School, and I had an amazing childhood. And then my family moved back to New Zealand for high school, where I went to high school. My family were based here for many years, but you know, I still got a lot of family in Kiribati. My mother had 11 brothers and sisters, and some of them are in Kiribati, and many have moved away and married to other Pacific islanders. So, for example, I have family in Fiji, in the Solomon Islands, you name it. So I consider myself to be really blessed. I was working in print to start with, and in the Cook Islands. I worked there for 8 years, and then I went to radio, and I loved radio. It's a very honest medium, but you know, there's something about pictures that I think is very, very powerful. And so an opportunity came up to apply for a job at Television New Zealand, and I got it 20 years ago now, so that's kind of giving a bit away about my age. But yeah, it is one of the best things that I've ever done, and I love my journey through journalism. I think it's what didn't inspire me that made a difference, and that is I wasn't inspired by the lack of Pacific Island journalists in journalism, in mainstream media. And that unfortunately is still the case today, although there are many more. There's still a lack of mainstream Pacific Island journalists, and that really inspired me to get into journalism and make sure that Pacific Island voices are represented on mainstream television and in the media. One of my most favourite stories, and I talk about this a lot, but it does mean a lot to me, and it's the story of Tai Kami. Her parents live in Fiji, and they're amazing people, but it's this family, they are so inspirational, and their daughter Tai was dying of cancer, and she was so brave, like the bravest girl I have ever met, ever. And we went to cover her, cover the story of Tai getting a medal from the King of Tonga. And I'll never forget, we're sitting at her feet, and the King of Tonga walks into to this household, just a normal household, which was unheard of. And you know, oh gosh, he cried when she sang to him, and then he presented the medal to her, and he said, I was just passing, and I thought this is what we give brave people. And he was right, she was so brave, and I cried when I interviewed her. It still gets me to this day that a story can make me feel humble, and you know, that means something. And she died 3 weeks later, and to this day I think about Tai and the work her parents and family are doing in her memory, and I just think that that's really what society is all about, and I feel really privileged to have played a part in that. But there are many other examples of you know, for me, what's made a difference too is helping people, making a difference. And one time I got a message from a woman who had done a story on her and her 11-year-old who had been in a very bad situation in a boarding house, and she couldn't get a house, and she kept getting turned down, and we did a story about her and her son, and they got a house as a result of our story with Housing New Zealand. And on Christmas Day she sent me a text, and it was, thank you, we're now going to have a Christmas because of you, we've got a roof over our head. And that made my Christmas, and that's really what it's all about. Yeah, as a Pacific correspondent for TVNZ, basically my job is to do Pacific Island stories, and that's all I do. So that's basically putting Pacific Island, my job is not just to tell glowing stories about Pacific people. That's not my job. My job is to tell stories and challenge people, and you know, good and bad stories. But the main thing is to get Pacific Island voices onto mainstream media. So I never think of a story as being positive or negative, because when you do what you might class as a negative story, the way you overcome that is by putting, so say there's an issue in the community, You show what's being done to address this issue. So you show the strong initiatives that Pacific people are doing to counter the problem. And so then it becomes, a great story. But, my job is to make sure, and you have to be brave, because sometimes I have to do stories that Pacific people would rather not air. That's my role, to make sure that they do get an air, because that's when change happens. You can just go through life and just put up all the loveliest things in the world, but then the real underlying issues still continue. And so we do need to make sure that these stories are covered, that we challenge. My job is to challenge and make sure that that gets a hearing, and make sure that these people's stories get heard by the mainstream. Well, there's been a lot of awards and for different things, like when I worked for Cook Islands Press in the Cook Islands, I was co-owner of that newspaper, and we won Freedom of Information Award from PINA. Won lots of individual awards for journalism, Voyager Awards for covering the Samoa measles crisis, which actually broke my heart. Those stories I was quite, it was really hard covering those stories. And but at the end of the day, I think I've just said it's not about the award. I can do without awards, that's not really important. What is important are the stories, and making sure that big issues in the Pacific are heard and are put on TV, so that leaders and our news does go out to over 20 Pacific Island stations across the region. So it's really important to have those stories on and make sure that Pacific voices are heard. Probably my ancestors, my grandmother and my mum. It's not easy being a strong Pasifika woman in the media. There's some hard things to get through, especially when you are going into the region and covering big events, and you have to sort of take into consideration cultural issues as well. But at the end of the day, I'm a journalist, and I think you have to be brave, you have to be courageous, and that I think I have got from my family. A few years ago, my cameraman Mike Fitzgerald and myself were in Tahiti, and we had just finished doing a shoot, and we're sitting on the beach. This is in Bora Bora. I know, a hard job, right? It was one of the few times that I've actually gone up to do some not hard news, and we heard screaming, and a Japanese woman ran past us screaming, and immediately I knew that someone must be drowning in the sea. And she went and grabbed two of the guys who were working at the resort giving out towels, and they ran past me, and they ran across a jetty, and they dived over like 3 sets of boats. It was incredible. It was something, I've never seen anything like it. And they swam out to sea and it was her husband who was drowning. And they brought him back, and I yelled at them, so bringing him towards the jetty. We would never have got him up. So I yelled, go to the beach, go to the beach. So I ran to the beach and they brought him to shore, and they didn't know how to do CPR. So I started doing CPR on him. And then my cameraman, Mike, came running up, and I said, he's stronger. And I said, you do the chest compressions and I'll do the mouth. And that was such a big moment, and I went back with my son actually, and we filmed him. Well, my son filmed a sort of a reunion. We didn't use it for air or anything, but my son filmed us, and Ayoko came running towards me, and we just had this magical moment where he hugged, and she said, thank you, and of course he couldn't remember anything because he was in a coma, and but later they both sent us, me and Fitzy, my cameraman, an email saying thank you, and they were holding the thing of beer each, and the fireworks going off behind them, and he was back to normal, back to his job, and they said thank you. And I always think that that's an important lesson, that, you know, learning CPR is really important. I try and drill it into everyone that I come across. You never know when it might come in handy. I kind of carry my past experiences with me, and because it's sort of like building a house, I think that I don't have any regrets and at all. But what I do take is my past experiences with me, and you learn from them, and that's what being an adult is all about. It's sort of like building a house. You know, you put the building blocks down and you build a really strong, solid house. If you kind of put stuff behind you, then I don't think that actually works as a human being. Take them with you and just learn from them. I guess I'm passionate about social justice. Like, I think in this crazy world where there's a lot of angry people, and I guess COVID has brought that out in a lot of people, that social equality, justice and equality for all is really important, and I try and make sure that that's a big part of my life. Yeah. Not in mainstream media. I do have a policy that I don't do interviews, sort of celebrity kind of interviews. I do it if it's to do with my job, which this is, but also I just feel that as reporters we shouldn't be selling ourselves as some sort of, you know, celeb. That makes me feel a bit ill. But I mean, obviously social media, so the stuff that's printed about me is to do with my job, and that's fine. But it's the social media, you know, as I said, COVID, it's bringing out the worst in people. And I think people are a bit lost, or they may have lost a lot themselves, or they're just feeling out of control, like lack of control over this world that we're living in. And so social media is a real beast. I have a policy where I don't really read a lot of stuff, but I find blocking anything sort of crazy, and there's quite a bit of crazy stuff, is very helpful. It's liberating when you block it. And I try not to engage as well. I think that's sort of a fool's game. Every so often I get lured down the rabbit hole and engage with someone, and then I think, no, stop, and just stop. It's not worth it. I've got people in my life who mean a lot to me and whose opinions count, and that's the most important thing to me. See, this is showing my age, isn't it? 1990s, and yes, I was working back then. I was working in the Cook Islands. I was co-owner of a newspaper, and one of the things that happened at the time was we were doing a lot of exposés on the government at the time. There was quite a lot of corruption, and the government was falling apart, and I guess we were a bit of a threat just by reporting the truth. And so what happened was the Prime Minister, Geoffrey Henry, who's actually, we got on really well after the 90s, but during that time he went on air in Parliament and accused myself and the publisher of being a CIA. We worked for the CIA. We'd been brought in by the Americans to destabilise the government, and it was quite, and that went to Parliament. That was broadcast live around the nation, and we're really proud of that. I mean, clearly we weren't CIA, but it was one of those moments where you think, wow. And it was a strange time, the 90s. That was one of my most nostalgic moments. I guess don't sweat the little stuff. Although, sometimes it's important to sweat the little stuff, because the little stuff is sometimes what makes the difference. But I think what that means is don't get bogged down in unnecessary things. Like, look at what's important, and also just be true to myself. And that's also some very good advice that I've got along the way. I guess for making a difference, there are stories that we do that actually do have resulted in a law change, or just big social changes. So that sort of is what I'd like to be remembered for. Also, just making a change in media and making sure that Pacific voices are the norm as opposed to the isolated. And it's really important to do that. I like putting on Pacific leaders onto our mainstream news. It's really important, and not just the leaders. Like for me, the real people, they're the ones that make a real difference, and they're the ones who we can all relate to, and so their voices are just as important, if not more important, than elected leaders. With family, I mean, that's a given. Family's really important to me, so yes, a lot of that. And I think, you know, with family comes responsibility, so yeah, that's my downtime, but also, you know, I work such long hours, so every moment I have is precious, and you do want to make sure that you spend it wisely. You can't go wrong with spending it with family, right? And with friends. I have friends who I value beyond any, you know, beyond. And so that's what I'd spend my downtime doing. I do love reading, of course, and there's certain things on TV that I do like, and I do watch a lot of, or a little bit, let's go with a little bit of sort of more relaxing sort of TV as opposed to just news and current affairs. You know, I love eating other people's cooking. However, I'm told I'm a good cook. So one of my go-to dishes is, of course, raw fish. Ikamata or oka or kokonda. Now I do go with the Fiji kokonda. I think that is the best raw fish. Please don't tell the other Pacific countries I said that, but it's true. And so I'm well known for doing that. I've got to really say Fiji, don't I? And I do love coming to Fiji, no word of a lie. It is fabulous. I do feel like I'm coming home when I come to Fiji. I've been going there since I was a little girl, and yeah, there's just something about it that really grips your heart. But also, I like different countries for different reasons. Like I love Tonga because I love the traditions, and I just love going there. And also Rarotonga, where I spent the 90s, and I spent so much time there. That is also, I consider that home, and so I love going there just to visit family and friends. At the moment, I quite like the Beach Boys' God Only Knows, but that's because it was on a movie which played recently called Love Actually. But I do love the song. But oh gosh, I've got so many different. I like everything. I like everything from ABBA. If we're talking about karaoke, I can sing Chiquitita with the best of them, and actually the worst of them, if we're being completely honest. And I like everything, like Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars. I kind of like happy songs, and I do like the classical as well. Kia ora, I'm Barbara Dreaver, and On the Pulse with Andy Blake.
Award-winning New Zealand journalist Barbara Dreaver wrapping the show and season in our Talanoa segment. Thank you, Barb, for the great interview, and to your camera team at TVNZ. Kia ora and vinaka vakalevu from the team here at MyTV. And that ends season 1 of The Pulse. I'm Andy Blake, and I take this opportunity to thank all our viewers and followers for the support shown throughout the season. Thank you to my show sponsors, Coca-Cola, BSP Life, Fiji Link, Fiji Airways, Captain Cook Cruises Fiji, Beauty Vaani, J Hunter Pearls, and designers Samson Lee, Andrew Paul, Temisetu Idaumia, Hupfield Herder, and Natalia Bentley Larson. I look forward to seeing you all again in our second season, where I'll be bringing you more quality local entertainment right here on MyTV. Don't forget to watch our Eat, Stay, Love segments when you fly with Fiji Airways. The segments can be found under The Pulse with Andy Blake in the entertainment section of In Flight. Remember to keep following our Facebook page, as I will be giving away some great prizes from our major sponsors, Coca-Cola and tourism partners, over the next few weeks. Have a great evening, God bless you, and Nisamo Demanda.
The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.